if you want to stay and you have someone like that coming at you, what you can do is try to reframe. And I'll give you some tactical points you can do, like searching for sound. So that kind of takes you out of the immediate and makes you more aware of what's going on around you in real time. Or you can start to activate your peripheral vision, which again gets some distance. Or you can become an objective observer. That again is all meant to get some distance between you and the actual situation that's unfolding in front of you. So you have to be able to decide what you can take and what you can't. If you decide you're in, then a cognitive reframe could be extremely helpful in that this is not happening to you, this is happening for you. So, how are you going to take what is happening in front of you and use it to your advantage to learn, to grow, to evolve?
Hi, I'm Walter, and I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the S.M.A.R.T Performance Podcast, where S stands for self-care, M is for mindful growth, A for adaptive learning, R for rhythmic operation, T is for a thriving community, and P is, of course, for performance. I'm welcoming my guest today, Shannon Smith. She just has been recently traveling the world in 8 months. It sounds even better than 80 days, right? So welcome back to the United States, or nearby at least. She has a very interesting topic we're going to talk about today. Being in a difficult predicament in the corporate environment or working for a toxic boss. Now what? But before we get started, Shannon, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive right into it.
Walter, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah. So, TLDR, long story short, I've come up through sales, through psychology, through neuroscience as of 2020. In 2020, I don't know if you guys remember that little pandemic thingy or not, but I was in a very dark place. I was not doing well. I was overthinking. I was spiraling. I was not being productive. I was anxious all the time. And so, luckily, in that time frame, I was able to come across a book called Norman Doidge, or the author is Norman Doidge, and the book is The Brain That Changes Itself. And so that kicked off a journey for me where I dove deep into peer-reviewed scientific journal articles on the topic of neuroscience. And what I found is that there is a lot of stuff in there that can help people in all different ways if they only could understand what's in the articles and then apply it to their lives. And so I started helping people with their habits in the field of neuroscience and then evolved to sales and neuroscience. And today I'm excited to talk about how we might help some folks who are stuck in a toxic boss situation. And, the market conditions are kind of crappy out there. Maybe you're not able to switch jobs right now. So we want to talk about how you might be able to immunize yourself from your toxic boss.
Great topics, and listen, we could talk about this for hours. I'm a big upper brain, lower brain philosopher, and I would love to see people embrace that more to really get a deeper understanding on who they are and how to interact with that and stay upper brain, for that example. So on the topic of toxic work environments, interesting enough, scary statistics, especially in healthcare, 68% of the workforce is at or near burnout. And that always leads to other negative downstream effects. In corporate America, it is not that far behind that scary statistic. So if you are now working somewhere and you have limited choices and you're working for this boss that just hoots and howls and screams and yells, and you really find this to be a toxic environment, but you need that paycheck, you need to feed your family. Take us on that journey. What is the person to do when they find themselves in a predicament like that?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm just going to add to your scary statistics. And I think it was a McKinsey study that said that 87% of the respondents of their survey reported having worked under a toxic boss at one point or another in their career. So pretty much we all have stories. I certainly have several. Of those 87%, a third were reporting that they were currently under a toxic boss. So, just more scary statistics for you. So, yeah, if you're experiencing this, You probably feel really stuck. You probably feel really suffocated. The Sunday scaries, most people know what that means because a lot of people have felt this. And so if you're going into work and you're finding that your leadership is hot and cold, one day they love you, one day they hate you, you're walking on shells, you don't really know what to expect, the expectations are changing constantly, then that's a sign that you could be under a toxic boss. In terms of what can you do if you don't want to quit your job, well, there are some things that are pretty easy to implement that I can talk about and that you can try tomorrow without a neuroscience degree. But yeah, should we maybe share a story or two, or do you want to just get right
Absolutely.
into the meat of it?
No, no. Listen, we love stories because that's really brings it into reality, and then out of those stories we can come up with your remedies, some actionable steps that people can take. By all means, proceed.
Well, I will say, this was my first big girl job coming out of college. I had just been hired for a boutique consulting firm out of Chicago, and I was just enamored by the place and certainly by the executives. In the very first day, it was me and one other new hire, and one of the executives, shall remain nameless, took us around for an hour. And while he was taking us around, he sat us down in his office and he was telling a story about a client he'd helped. I was enamored. I was in awe. Maybe I was fangirling a little bit. I don't know. But all of a sudden, in the middle of the story, he stops and looks at me and says, "Why do you have such a stupid look on your face?" I was 20 years old. This was my first real job. And of course, in that moment, I certainly did not understand what was going on, that it was really not about me, that it was about him, that, you know, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time with this person. And so I think that's one thing that you can take away is that the toxic boss or toxic coworker, it's really not about you. You're unfortunately just the target. Usually it's an insecurity thing. They're having their own issues, certainly not making excuses for them. But very rarely is it actually about the person. So we can talk about some tactics as to how to get some distance between you and the toxic boss so that it maybe is a little easier to not take it so personally.
Yeah, it's so interesting is that there's an honest feedback and there's not very genuine interaction that can leave people in a pile of hurt. So if something like that happens, and I've certainly had my experiences over time where I think cultural differences and cultural norms have caused some uncomfortable situations that we needed to raise awareness, but it was less about toxic, it was more about culture. So what would you recommend a 20-year-old who's in the same predicament? But what can they do to come out of that, still feeling some sense of self-worth and feeling that there's a future in the company other than running away?
Sure. Well, before, I say, do this, know too that everybody is on their own life journey. And so you have to figure out when something is too much for you and you have that ability to make that determination. But if you want to stay and you have someone like that coming at you, what you can do is try to reframe. And I'll give you some tactical points you can do, like searching for sound. So that kind of takes you out of the immediate and makes you more aware of what's going on around you in real time. Or you can start to activate your peripheral vision, which again gets some distance. Or you can become an objective observer. That again is all meant to get some distance between you and the actual situation that's unfolding in front of you. So you have to be able to decide what you can take and what you can't. If you decide you're in, then a cognitive reframe could be extremely helpful in that this is not happening to you, this is happening for you. So, how are you going to take what is happening in front of you and use it to your advantage to learn, to grow, to evolve? And so some cognitive reframing and some distancing techniques can really make a big difference.
So I would think, and I can't say I've been in that situation, but certainly I can relate to that to some extent early in my career, that if somebody says something like that, I tend to go into my fight for flight amygdala lower brain function, where of course my peripheral vision is shot. All I can see is the angst and the nausea rising out of my stomach into my brain. So what is the immediate thing that somebody could do to try to, I love the reframing. I love all the things that you said, the dysregularity, go back to finding something that is, different, like music. But how can they recognize the earliest onset of that fight or flight response, and how can they counteract that? Again, awareness around it is most important.
Right. Well, you will probably get hot. Your palms will start to sweat. Your heart is going to palpitate. You may get, really nervous. And so many times, even before something has been delivered, the body knows that there's a threat. And so it will start responding before an exchange even happens. I've seen one study say that it's like 200 milliseconds before the thing is said, the body can kind of sense that it's coming. So those are signs that it's happening, like something is coming and we have to adjust. But yeah, awareness is absolutely the first step. If you're not aware, you're going to be into it so quick, you're not going to be able to get out.
Yeah, so interesting. So building upon that, you said you have another story that you wanted to share?
Sure. I mean, I have a lot of them. um, there was another time I was working at Big Tech, and I was responsible for the communications for one of the departments there. And it was an interesting sort of dynamic because we started out actually on a different project and we were peers, but she had decided that she wanted to be a full time. I was still contracting at the time. And so she was overseeing some of the contract work. And it started off great, but gradually there was more and more of that lead pulled up to where, flash forward a month or two, and I'm getting this ping that says, it took you 7 minutes to do insert task. And then the next statement was, wait a minute, this communication is all wrong. The spacing is the wrong font. So no words are there, but the space is the wrong font. So whenever you get into a situation where you are being micromanaged to that detail, often you're going to make more mistakes because you are operating from that amygdala, that survival space. And whenever you are operating from that survival space, you're not going to be innovative. You're not going to be forward thinking because you're just trying to survive.
Interesting. Two good scenarios. You would think if this happens more than once with the same boss, your Sunday afternoon will look quite miserable, right? That's where you really kind of assess. I always ask it, is that don't wait for Monday morning, but if you have anxiety on 3 o'clock on a Sunday, it might be time to open up Indeed.com and find yourself a new role. When is the right time to leave a toxic boss before it has long-term impact, like causing true, psychological trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually had a client who became physically ill to the extent that she had to take off work because of this one particular toxic boss. This was in academia, but it can wreak havoc. Just stress alone wreaks havoc on your body, your brain, all of it, your self esteem, things that, are even physiological. So it's a great question, and everybody really has to answer it for themselves. I mean, obviously, if your body is tensing up on Sundays, you're stressed, maybe you get a headache, maybe you start breaking out in hives, you should listen to your body. That's not what bodies do normally. So you have to pay attention to that. But at the same token, there's a really fun study out there involving rats, where essentially they found that rats who had a moderate amount of adversity tended to be the most resilient. So the more that you can go through and endure, the more resilient you're going to be in the future. So it really does benefit you if you're able to handle it.
The key message is that you don't need to do this alone, right? Is that you need
Oh,
to be able
absolutely
to
not.
reach out and ask for help. Most companies where you should have employee assistance programs, you should be able to go to them and seek help. It's not about punishing the person, but it's about making really self-preservation and making sure you take care of your own soul. So as we are on the closing stretch over here, why don't we talk a little bit about what actions can people take if they find themselves in a situation where it is uncomfortable to work and they are contemplating leaving, or they really feel ill on Sundays at 3 o'clock, thinking about having to go back on Monday morning.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the body a lot. Go back to the body. If you start noticing triggers, like, Walter's saying with the Sunday scaries, or you're stressed or your headache is coming on Sundays, pay attention to that. Awareness is really the first step. If you can, in the moment, if you're prepared and you know what's coming, or even if you don't necessarily know what's coming, because that is kind of a hallmark of a toxic boss, be prepared for the unexpected. And so if they start going at you or trying to publicly humiliate you, which has happened to me too a couple times, um, be prepared to activate that peripheral awareness, because that's going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. You're going to be able to calm down a little bit, and you're going to be able to respond versus react. So that's one big thing. The cognitive flexibility component of it. If you say, you know what, I'm in right now, I'm going to grow my resilience, then look at it like it's happening for you, and they're building you and they're evolving you. Just a small little mindset shift can make all the difference in the world. If you can also, like Walter was saying earlier, have a support community. That's a huge piece of it. I mean, there's study upon study that show the bonds that soldiers create whenever they're engaged in war run so deep. So it may feel like that at times, and having that support network is going to be absolutely imperative.
Thank you for sharing that. The only words of wisdom that I'll add to that sentence is that we have one life to live. We should not spend much more time than we absolutely need to in an environment that's not healthy for our psychological being, and it certainly starts robbing you of time and quality at home. So to take action is the best solution. I think the things you talked about are certainly great steps in the right direction. Where can people find you, Shannon?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on brainhacks by Shannon.com. I do speaking engagements. I can do corporate and neuroscience sales consulting. So yeah, and if you have a toxic boss that is detrimenting you in some fashion, I'm happy to chat about that too.
Okay. And what is a closing message that you want to leave with the audience today?
Yeah, you have more power than you realize. There is a lot of agency you have just within your own body and mind, and you've got to exercise that in whatever capacity you may find yourself, toxic boss or not, especially right now. Everything is crazy in the world. So understand that you have more power than you think.
I think it's wonderful to make that suggestion, and hope that people take that to heart, because they have their own choices to make in life. And again, we only have one life to live, and there's only one thing we'll never get back, and that is, of course, time itself. Shannon, thank you very much for joining me today on the S.M.A.R.T podcast. Look forward to continue the conversation. I'll look you up online as well. Thank you, and look forward to our next session in the near future. Have a good evening, everybody. Take care, Shannon.
Thank you, Walter.